I'm Imani Mixon, founder-in-chief of the city proper, and I'd like to invite you into my living room for one-on-one, in-depth interviews with the most talented creatives in Detroit who also happen to be the homies. Oh yeah, it's called Proper Nouns. If you feel like you're always the smartest one in the room, then you've never met Paul Jackson. And I can guarantee you've never had a conversation with him. Paul is like the philosopher next door. He has one of the coolest minds on the planet, and he's not stingy with it. In this episode, we talk about work and what it means, progress and how it happens, and why Detroit is so many things to so many people. So what do you call yourself? Because I would say you're an activist, artist, organizer, thinker.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like that still doesn't sound like you.
Yeah, no, I don't think I'm an activist. I definitely think I'm a design thinking type person, designer. Yeah, planner. I plant things.
Organizer? Is that
definitely an organizer. I definitely
okay.
Organize systems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just a lover of aesthetics. Am trained in counseling and different levels of therapy. The truth is, the way that I see myself is I'm always preparing for insurgency, for civil war. So a lot of what I've done with my life is to be prepared to be moving and not having a phone and.
Well, I hope if some stuff pop off that you are up the street for me, and that I don't know. You gotta make an Imani kit, right? So while you making your escape plan, I just need a small satchel.
Yeah.
I want to talk about things that I haven't talked about yet on the show, and I feel like every time I talk to you, I talk about some shit I haven't talked about yet.
True.
So.
Same.
Right.
Let's talk about whether or not I'm allowed to call Detroit disgusting.
Okay, right.
Remember that?
I remember that.
You didn't like that.
I didn't like that. I really didn't like that.
So, I still, to this day, think Detroit disgusts me on a regular basis. There are things here that are just vile. Not only that, the system is disgusting, and the relationship between those things and the system at large. Dan Gilbert disgusts me, right? Like, Mike Duggan's face literally makes me want to vomit.
So, like, from a structural and systemic point of view, the way Detroit has kind of carried that and carries that, that's what disgusts you.
That disgusts me. I mean, we grew up celebrating industries like auto industry that we didn't know were, like, so aggressively indifferent to ecological realities that they just poison the southwest side of the city. And that's just okay. The east side of the city used to be one of the most fertile arable areas in the country, and now there are fruit trees that just don't bear fruit.
But I feel like, so how you're like, okay, the east side was fertile, fruit used to bloom on these trees. I'm focusing on the fruit that doesn't bloom anymore. Like, you know, like I come in at like the future looking, like emotional, optimistic point of view. And I think that's been a comfortable, familiar place for me, but it's also where I find my most, like where I feel like I learn the most is like, okay, given this system, given these things that we haven't been able to like overcome or we can't control, what does control and what does overcoming look like? I don't know if I have the foresight or like I don't know what that looks like. I've never seen it happen. I think a lot of people have never seen it happen.
I think organizer me says Detroit's beautiful. I think artist me says Detroit is disgusting. Right? Because artist me is like how I process the like things that were painful in my childhood. Organizer me is how I respond to that in a way that like sets in motion some kind of cosmic reality that would disrupt other people from having to sleep in their winter coats as children. Right? Like trying to prevent hunger from being a reality. And so I think the optimism in the fruit that doesn't bloom anymore is important focus. I don't think everybody sees the value of optimism, because if it's all optimism, then you kind of get into these white fantasies that think that Detroit was never colonized, that indigenous people were not attacked viciously, that there weren't slaves and plantations on the east side of Detroit at any point in time, and none of that's true.
What I'm experiencing, I think the way we encounter things, it sort of like mirrors the way a lot of people of color do, where it's like, you're in this place, this is what you know, this is where you're born. So me being here makes it a site for history and alternatively a site for pride. Like, this is where I'm from, this is my city, I love it so much. That's where I'm at. And I don't think I'm blind to the things that happen here or have happened here or that can happen or what people have experienced, but I'm just so motivated by the good things I've seen happen here and the good people I know here, that for me, for my energy to go to this disgusts me, that's not a place I can work from.
Watching old ladies stand and wait for the bus in sub-zero temperature for 45 minutes, if you have a consciousness, it should disgust you. But for some people, they don't have to see that because they're just never going to do that, right?
Yeah.
They're going to drive everywhere and make decisions about the 65% of the city that does ride the bus.
That's fair.
That's a part of the problem. We need folks who are visionaries to actually put themselves in more positions to have to deal with disgusting reality.
For sure. And I think it took a long time. Like, it took for me to leave, to go to school, to study. Journalism and communications, I guess, are supposed to be sort of a vehicle for people. So you're supposed to ask questions and interrogate people and like figure out the root causes of things. And it took for me to get all of that to be like, oh, like the simplest thing that I find to be weird or unfair is actually been written for 50 years and now we're feeling it. So it's like, to be able to think toward what I can do today for 50 years to be better is a huge responsibility, and it's a responsibility that a lot of people don't have, and I do think it belongs in the people who are most affected by it, in their hands. But it's just like you talk about work, you talk about tangible work that has to be done to make things better. How do you think about it, and how do you approach it in the things that you do? Like liberation and freedom and like changing these things that have consistently been constraints for us.
So there's tangible stuff that does change stuff, there's tangible stuff that doesn't change stuff, there's intangible stuff that doesn't necessarily change stuff, and we do that all the time, right? We sit around, we ponder, we look out the window, and then there's intangible stuff that changes stuff profoundly, right? Like magic, spiritual work, our indigenous practices, astral understanding and knowledge. So we can talk about the tangible stuff that changes stuff, but a lot of what we're doing is just constantly preparing ourselves for the spiritual elements of being able to actually give yourself over to something that you won't benefit from. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people. Working not productively but generatively, it helps you to experience little tastes of those things that you're working for in the now, so that you're also being healed while you're working. That's planting food, right? That's painting, that's painting murals where there used to be nothing. It's actually having community, like gatherings and conversations and assemblies where we talk and we discuss and we plan what it looks like to build a community land trust, where we're protecting land and property from speculative markets. I mean, I spend most of my day designing stuff, making clothes, like fucking with shit I got at Cheap Charlie's, and playing with wood, doing a lot of work with compost. A lot of that's not going to change anything, but it's very tangible and it's healing me. But then it's just being in conversation with people who are doing stuff, figuring out how do we collectively address the problem, actively imagine solutions by play-based activities like this.
Right.
And then play our way into some kind of
great
future.
Stuff.
Some great stuff, and start to live into those like visions that we have and lean in on them. And I think we can, like you're saying, really create a world where everyone's tears are in the soil. And I think, we get so used to spectating that we don't remember to express.
Right.
Or
being ready to be watched. You know what I'm saying?
Watched,
preparing for a performance is a lot of people's lives all the time.
I think a lot of us are used to hurting and not having an outlet for it, and then a lot of people are used to always saying they're hurting, but they don't really know what it means to hurt.
Right.
White folks in North America, it's like any comment offends them. It's like I don't know if you know, what it means to be cattle, right? To know that your kids and your kids' kids will belong to this family, or even to know that that was even in your family story, and to know that that's happening now, right? Like to be born on the south side of Chicago, on the west side of Chicago, to be born on the east side of Detroit means that anybody who wants to invest in a private prison is putting like a bet on your life. Yeah. And that there's systems in place to make sure that those investments are still sustained. So, and that comes from like certain people not having to speak, right? Like, I think a lot about how white silence protects white violence, right? It's like, we can do these things, and if we don't say anything though, people will kind of be like, it'll kind of just kind of dissipate. We should force other people to speak. People will come to a training that they've paid for about whiteness and race and sit there. And I'm like, honey, the check has been cashed. Right. There's like, we bought bottles of rum. If you don't want to get water bottle. Yeah, if you don't want to get anything out of this, that's whack. But I know why you're doing it. It's because this silence is not having the language, which can be sincere, right? Yeah. It can be sincere, but there's a reason why you're programmed not to have a language for things that you're benefiting from. My dad sometimes used to say that if it feeds you, you better know how it works. He used to fuss at me in particular for not wanting to go out and see him work and build these farming mechanisms. And his whole thing was like, bruh, you need to know how to name this, this, and this. I think the same thing goes for a lot of folks who benefit from systems, but they don't know. Right. They don't know. Right. But the money's there when they go into the fund. Yeah. Right. For so long we've getting accepted to Harvard was someone's revolution. Because it was all about them. It was all about them, and they could leave. I hear on the bus all the time, I'm getting off this motherfucker. I'm not going to be on here next year. I'm getting my life together. And I'm in my head thinking, like, my life's pretty together. I'm going to be on it next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. Yeah. Because of understanding that I get a lot of value out of people seeing the folks who are on the bus. Any folks. I think that when we learn how deeply beautiful folks are that we're dealing with, then we won't just be bought off by an admittance letter to Harvard. We're going to say, no, I'm going to fight for a little bit more than that. I'm going to fight for something more profound than that. Deeper and stronger. Yeah, and it usually realigns us to understand that getting accepted to Harvard ain't shit for anybody. White, black, anything. It's a piece of paper. But that being lured away from your own intimate setting, away from being held by your parents and your aunts and your grandma, then you don't even have a sense of moral alignment, because you can be lured into thinking that, like, you gotta have this nice car, you gotta have this nice apartment, because that's what we want for you. And the people who are selling it to you also know that those very things don't make them happy. Right. Right. And nobody will tell you that. Nobody will tell you that. They won't tell you that because they're just trying to, it's an okie doke, because ultimately, look at this, like, for so long, Detroit was nasty, it was unwanted, it was unlovable. It was disgusting. You could have called it disgusting 10 years ago, and a lot of people would have said, okay. They would have put it on the front page. Yep. You see what I'm saying? And that's why I said it now, because it's controversial. Yeah. Because it's counter to this narrative of come back and buy up everything. Yeah. Now I think it's strategic for us to remind people that it is disgusting, but to have an analysis of why. Then it was just like, yeah, Detroit was nasty, don't come here. And that was the whole statement. And it was nasty, don't come here because we were here. But now it's hard to say it's disgusting when there's so much stuff. Yeah. And I think that's the moral realignment, is like, we're being misaligned to think that their stuff is our stuff. Anyone who's willing to abandon that misalignment, that fucked up thinking about stuff and hoarding and exploitation, will start to recognize that there's a value to that intimacy that comes with learning who you really are. I think I like sit for hours and watch videos of caterpillars coming out of the little cocoon. Oh my gosh. And it's how much struggle it is, but it's so clear, I cannot stay here. What do you mean? It's like this cocoon will kill you. And you find all the time like caterpillars that got stuck in a cocoon and they're just, that's it. And that's capitalism, right? It's like, I cannot stay here. I cannot stay in this job. I cannot come back to this office again. I cannot be in this moment again. and it's very difficult to get out of here. And you watch them struggle, and it's crazy. And also that cocoon is everything they knew.
Right.
And in the context of their old thinking, that cocoon was actually protecting them.
Right.
By getting a massive check protects you from
Protects
being
you
out
from
on the
a
street.
whole lot.
Right.
From not making a crime.
And so you don't want to just throw away that protection, but you need to understand that like safety shifts when you learn how to fly. The concept of safety shifts when you learn how to fly.
When
you grow wings, the things that you thought you needed to be protected from, you didn't. And sometimes you needed to be protected from them then. But understanding the larger situation is not everything, and that the larger situation sometimes is caused by some other variables. And so sometimes I think about these like monarch butterflies when they get together in just like this huge display, and I wonder what they're talking about, and I wonder if they're actually diagnosing the problem
of
a 10,000-year-old ecological situation where they had to have a cocoon. We'll never know. I think about that just as like a silly little metaphor for like us, where we still have shells on, and they're from things that happen to us. But how can we actually just like literally experience this transformation to where that's not everything to us anymore?
I'm just curious. I think this is my final curiosity. Where do you find your hope and or your peace in all the work that you do?
I think here and now gives me hope, and here we are. And as predicted, nothing is as expected.
All right. Well, I don't have any more questions. I'm so happy you came. I'm happy.
It's my turn now.
You're gonna ask
it's
me questions
now.
No.
They're like, no.
Everybody does that too. Everybody takes the last 5 minutes to be like.
Yeah, I mean, tell the people what. Well, they'll know what you're working on because it's on your shit. You got a job.
Yep.
And you make buku bucks, but you have to get up early in the morning.
Working on the buku, working on the getting up early.